Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. Charlie mentions the big IPO today, Zeekr. And going pretty well so far, as you saw. IPO price 21, opened at 26. Where are we right now? 26.44. I mention this for two reasons. A little bit later on in the broadcast, we're going to be talking with that company's chief financial officer, Jing Yuan. And the timing of this IPO is remarkable. With the headline on the terminal, Biden set to hit China EVs. This is a Chinese EV company with tariffs. Tariff rate on EVs expected to quadruple from roughly 25% to 100%, according to the Wall Street Journal. And a Chinese EV maker is going public today at the NYSE. This should be an interesting conversation once Kaylee joins us, and we are joined by Jing Yuan. Right now, it's Nathan Dean, who keeps us honest at Bloomberg Intelligence with his eye on Capitol Hill this week, and a speaker who has survived. Nathan, it's great to see you, senior U.S. policy analyst here in Washington at BI. They actually got something done last night in the Senate. It's amazing when things come up on a deadline, everybody needs to get out of town. No amendments. The FAA reauthorization moves ahead. Are you surprised to see this, or was this in the cards?
No, I mean, we knew it was going to happen. I mean, at least we knew that something was going to happen by that May 10th deadline. Mm-hmm. Just because, look, these things are must pass for a reason. Now, the idea here that there were no amendments included, at least the non-germane amendments in here, it was a big disappointment to a lot of people who were trying to push marijuana banking. Right. The Affordable Connectivity Program was not included. A lot of people in the telecommunications space wanted that. Mm-hmm. And so now the question is, what happens next? Well, it's going to be really quiet in the congressional front. Look, I hate to say this in May, but they're here June, July. They're gone August. September's the funding bill, and then they're gone in October.
Campaign season.
Exactly.
Sure.
So, there are a couple more opportunities for these bills to get attached to bigger pieces, NDAA, the funding bill, and so forth like that. But if you're hoping for a specific piece of legislation to pass, odds just keep getting a little bit lower and lower.
Well, yeah, there's a reason why we were saying this is the last train to leave the station, with an eye on stablecoin, with an eye on safe banking, as you just mentioned. Are those two on ice?
So the marijuana banking is certainly on more ice. If not, it's probably fallen through the ice at this point. Wow. I mean, look, they've tried so many times to attach things. But until I see language from House Speaker Mike Johnson, the House Financial Services Committee Chairman Patrick McHenry, or Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, until I see language from one of those three individuals saying that they're open to this idea of marijuana banking, I don't think it's going to happen. Wow. As for stablecoins, the question for me is that we've seen statements from Republicans and Democrats that they're on board with this, but where's the text? Right. It was supposed we were talking about this 18 months ago.
Yes.
So I need to see where the text is, because eventually that train is going to be gone and people are going to be like, look, I'm not going to vote on anything. I got a race to run in November. Yeah. So that stablecoin bill legislation needs to come out today if we have any hopes.
Even if it did, though, moving as a standalone would be fraught with potential risk, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of those bills where I think you're going to hear a lot of people say, well, we'll try and attach it to something, but if not, lame duck. And, that was one of the biggest concerns with the stablecoin bill was that, there's bipartisan support for it. And I think they could come to an agreement, but it's stablecoins. It's not something that the Senate is going to deviate all of their time to negotiating here, especially when Senator Schumer has been hinting that the border bill could come back in late May. So
you've got to roll your eyes at that.
I do. Right? But, it's just one of those things where, there are only so much time until they are gone and they're out campaigning and so forth like that. Yeah. Stablecoins is going to have to find there's going to have to be some creative thinking to get that to the president's desk.
Boy, that's for sure. Nathan Dean with the reality check here, because the store, it sounds like, might be closed. I mean, we've got the farm bill. That's a pretty big deal, actually. But outside of that, any other major legislation moving, we're basically looking ahead to next budget season, are we not?
That's exactly it. Yeah. I mean, it's like once the FAA bill passes or passed, because there was a small extension. Yeah. Once the FAA bill passes, like you said, there's the farm bill. There's this funding bill to keep the government open past September 30th. Look, there's not going to be a shutdown, and that usually means that they're going to kick the can to next year, and that usually means no big amendments get attached to that.
After November.
Exactly. So I think if there's a specific piece of legislation that you're hoping that gets to it, you either got to hope that it's lame duck, or you have to hope that there's so much support that everybody just says we're going to do it with debate and let's just get it through into the president's desk.
Fascinating. So what did we learn this week through the whole motion to vacate? process? Because you could look at this a couple of ways. Say, hey, you know what? Mike Johnson, made man. He just survived what doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. And he's got the Democrats at his back. He's got nothing to worry about. But 11 Republicans showed up to fire him. And they're not going away. What's the rest of this Congress look like for Mike Johnson?
So I think you can view him as a caretaker speaker. I mean, look, he's going to continue to do what he does, and that is take time to analyze, get, allies on his side. And there's really nothing out there that I think is really worrisome for markets. Certainly the debt ceiling is not out there. That's next year. But what Speaker Johnson also did is he just bought himself until time of next year, because next year, depending on the election, all bets are off. I mean, just look at what President Trump was saying about former House Speaker Paul Ryan this week. He's not very pleasant words for the former speaker, but a couple of years prior, he was saying great things about him. So it's almost like a transactional relationship where, the House Speaker is like going to run us through the rest of the year. He'll take care of the House, try and do his best for the Republicans in terms of campaign season, and then we'll have to see what happens in 2025.
Is there a sense, you talk to a lot of investors, they call you for your analysis. Based on the questions that you hear, is there a sense that there's some relief here, that gridlock is good, that, hey, at least we don't have to worry about Washington for the rest of the year?
So actually, I think what the investors are doing is they're taking away their focus of Congress, and they're saying, okay, Congress has given us some clarity in terms of doing stuff or not doing stuff. But now they're looking at regulators, because now that the congressional side is going to quiet, the regulators are going to move up, because they have this Congressional Review Act deadline of early August that they have to get everything out. So don't be surprised if the Fed, the SEC, and the other regulators begin to start pushing out a lot of their rules, or even just in the non-financial space, EPA, for example, anybody, they're all trying to get out before the August season. So the investors are now moving from Capitol Hill to more of the buildings that ring the National Mall.
That's the smart take. We have Nathan Dean join us for. So with that in mind, Michael Barr, I believe, is testifying next week. Are we going to get a Basel III update, or is this conversation taking a different direction?
I think we are going to get a Basel III update, because Katanga Johnson at Bloomberg News put out a piece just saying that they are going to get the Basel III endgame done by August. That is out of consensus. If you talk to anybody up in Midtown Manhattan, their thought was, and my thought was, is that there was a reproposal coming. But if the Fed thinks that they can get it done by August, Michael Barr is going to have to explain why. Because there's two things here. One, you have to dramatically change the proposal to get moderate Democrats on board, but also you need to change the proposal so that it passes the courts, because there is most likely a lawsuit coming on this. And so how much do you change the rule that you can get it through without having a reproposal requirement and so forth? It's a tricky situation for the Fed, but according to the Fed, they're moving forward.
This is remarkable. So what's going to happen in this hearing? This is going to be pretty chippy, I'm guessing.
So there's obviously the Basel III question, but then you got the FDIC. The FDIC, there was a report that came out this week talking about the toxic culture over at the FDIC. You're going to see a lot of Republicans push for Chairman Grumer to resign. Right now he does have support of the Democrats, and from an investor point of view, him leaving or not only really just, depends on the ability of Basel III to get out or not. I'm also interested to hear what the conversation about the incentive compensation rule that has come out is. Representative Velasquez has been pushing the FDIC quite a bit on this. Now, the FDIC can say, look, we've put this proposal out. It's a proposal. I'm using air quotes if you can't see me on the radio, because it's not exactly, they're not publishing it in the Federal Register. So it's more of like a request for comment. But this incentive compensation proposal will allow Chairman Grumer to say, look at me, I've done all this great stuff. You can blame the Fed here. They didn't do it. By the way, don't ask me any questions about the culture over at that.
So it sounds like this is going to be a toxic hearing, that this is going to be high drama, and everyone's going to be recording a commercial while they're at it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is also one of the last remaining hearings that you're going to get these regulators before the election. And so, not only are you going to press on these rules, but you're just going to press on government overreach, a lot of the regulatory issues. I mean, the Basel III endgame in particular, because when the regulators proposed it, it was a 19% capital increase for the U.S. banks. Compared to what they've done in Europe, it's around 3 to 4%. And I think in order to get this proposal out by August, they're going to have to drop that to maybe around 7 or 8%, but just more in line. But the question is, how are you going to do it and get it past the courts? And so I think some Republicans out there, if they're not going to take shots at FDIC Chairman Gruenberg, they're going to go to Michael Barr at the Fed and say, how are you going to do this? Because we're suing you, not we, the industry is suing you, and we'll sue you. How are you going to get your job done?
I love this. You have a podcast at BI
Yep.
Can you tell our listeners how to find it?
Yeah.
When does it go up?
It's Votes and Verdicts. Goes out every Thursday. It's on Apple, Spotify, all Bloomberg
So there's a new one right now, just from last night.
Yep.
All right. It's worth the listen. I ask you that because you got a lot of fans around here. That's Nathan Dean, everybody, on Balance of Power. As you would expect, Dad, as we know him around here in Washington, he keeps us honest on a lot of important stories. Speaking of which, before we assemble our panel, we want to bring